which is Rekognition. All right, Amazon Rekognition custom labels now supports auto-scaling inference units. I think my initial reaction to this is, okay, that's great, but IUs are really expensive. So this is interesting. So in and of itself, custom labels, the idea is you have a video stream or an image stream, and you want to look for particular objects that are going to be in the standard in the standard training set, in the standard catalog. Maybe the manufacturing scenario, or I don't know, security scenario, or you're just doing something different, and you want to be able to detect these and add these custom labels. So okay, so it's previously it said custom labels with unpredictable workloads had to set minimum inf units to support the peak volume. So this sounds like 10 years ago, right? Oh, we don't know how big of a load you're going to need, so just provision for the maximum load. That sounds very old.
This is the on-premise thinking for a cloud service.
Yes.
But I'm glad that they're changing that.
So now you can still, but I guess what surprises me about these is that, okay, now you're only charged $176 for 19 hours plus 5 hours, 24. So the use case they're giving is that you had to scale up for 5 hours out of a 24-hour day, and that only cost you $176 to the $480. This still seems really expensive. Is my reaction to this in general.
Yeah, I think so. Right now, for their inference, for the inference process, they are using a lot of the Intel chips, but they are working on their own inferentium process as well. So I foresee that this price will go on over a period of time, and as they move completely into serverless, where hopefully we will never have to worry about, setting up machines or inference units and so on. It just takes care of itself behind the scenes, where you have a bunch of queries and you get charged on a per transaction basis. I think that's the way to go. And I have no doubt that AWS will get there. Right now, they use a whole lot of Intel-based inference engines or inference processors, and they have their own new Graviton-based inferentium, or ARM-based inferentium. It's only a matter of time before most of these will turn into a serverless setup with all of it going to inferentium. I think it was in 2020 that they announced the work that they were doing on the inferentium chip. It's available today. I just don't think it's rolled out with enough capacity.
So within their entire machine learning pipeline, as that all gets standardized over to, for the most part, Graviton,
right?
Then you hopefully will be able to see things like serverless inference. I'd imagine that these are for very low latency applications, where you'd want this. I'm still getting over the idea. You want your peak infrastructure ready all the time, but I guess.
I think with any inference model, there are three dimensions of trade-off. One is what is the cost of training your model? Okay, but that's not so much on the inference side, that's more on the training side. But second is, what is the latency of getting the results, and what is the accuracy of getting these results? Okay, so for example, if you might be okay with the machine learning accuracy being 90% or confidence levels being 90%, you want the answer back in under 100 milliseconds. But in other cases, you might actually want that confidence level to be 99%, but that might take you 2 seconds to get back results. So the workload is a function of not just the latency so much, but the latency and accuracy, because that's how much compute you will probably need.
Yeah, and there's definitely diminishing returns to accuracy, right? I remember looking at Data Robot, and they give these big leaderboards of models, and you get models that were 2% more accurate that took 10 times more power in terms of inference, in terms of training. So I guess that's a big trade-off. One thing I'm not seeing in the article is it's talking about scaling up by hour. So I guess that is the unit of granularity, right? So you can't scale up on a minute per minute basis. We're talking hours.
We're still talking about hours.
Okay.
To do this.
It does feel like where EC2 was 10 years ago. You're paying in block hours. Yeah. So I guess hopefully we'll move towards a serverless framework, or at least more granularity than chunks of hours. Hopefully it gets cheaper, because I want to be able to play with it and experiment with it, but it still seems a little bit pricey for that type of thing. If we wanted to build a cat detector for our garden, that might be $176 a day, or even 4 hours, a bit more of that.
I completely agree. It's not big consumer grade yet.
Yeah.
It's still, like, I think this would be completely fine if we were using the mechanism of detecting defect in, let's say, your chips that you were, shipping.
Yeah,
and so
where it's highly profitable.
Correct. And you wanted to have run through defect detection on 10,000 per hour and so on. It makes sense in those scenarios, but it's still not quite commodity grade for most of the use cases where you would want to use it.
Yeah, well, if you were adding this to an app you were making for free,
like if I wanted a content recognition, system that looked at all of my PPTs and extracted a bunch of interesting data from there, allowed me to search through all my PPTs or PDFs and stuff like that, this would not really be the mechanism to look at all those pictures.
Yeah. Well, I guess you can do it all once, and hopefully you have a lot of presentations, so it might take a couple
hours. Yeah. So, but it's a step in the right direction, moving from just saying what your upper is going to be or your maximum capacity to moving to auto scaling. Definitely a step in the right direction. I'd love to see the by second, ideally, followed by serverless, where it's transaction based.
All right. So then rating it, I think we'll give it a simplify. So definitely
as over setting the limit. Yes.
Yeah. That's better. And in terms of the article's content itself, I think it would have been interesting to know, I don't know, a ballpark of a little more details into how this would work, how many inferences per second you would want, and just a bit more detail how this would work.
Right. And I think I'd give this a 3. 3 seems like a score that befits this particular.
Seems fair.
There's a lot of interesting stuff that's come out in the last week. There are a bunch more announcements, but I think this is just about the time that we have. So coming back to the event I have at hand,